Hello and welcome to video 21 of the Mega Man series. We're going to be building a boss fight scene, which we're going to be adding to the main scene that we've been working with. So what I want to do is I want to start with the actual boss fight from the original game so we can see how that actually plays out. So the music changes, the boss shows up, gets an energy bar, fills up, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of skip ahead, because basically when the fight happens, and then we're going to... Here. So the music stops, weapon part drops, it collects it, and then they tally up the score. And then it would go back to the stage select, which we don't have yet, but we will be building that at some point, and so we can close that. And so let's take a look at what we're going to have by the end of this video. So we're going to bring this over, we're going to start this up, and what I've done is I've added a couple of screwdrivers into the scene just so we can collect some points and some bonus balls. Alright, so we got 1,000 points, we've collected a couple bonus balls, so we should be getting an extra 2,000 after the boss fight ends and we win. So I'm going to jump ahead so we can skip all that other stuff. And then this is our boss fight. And so we're just going to take this guy out. And actually I noticed that in my video, and when I was building him, he actually gets beat really easily, and then I finally thought, I was like, duh, and I finally figured out why. It's because actually when he gets hit, he does have his own moment of invincibility. So I didn't take that into account, so I have that fixed now, and we'll be putting that code in. So let's take this guy out. So there, he's a lot harder than he was before. So there's our weapon part that got dropped. We just collected it. And we collected 2 bonus balls, and now we have 53,000 points. He was worth 50,000. And the scene starts over. So we're going to be building that today, and then we're going to get started in a moment. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So before we do anything, I want to... I made some changes to the Bombman script, and it was after I made the last video when we built out Bombman, and it had to do with his launching and the jump. So it was a couple things I noticed. I was kind of like looking at it when I was doing the video and trying to explain it, and I think I was kind of stumbling around, and I think I know why, because it didn't make any sense. So this was like original code that I had before doing the video and polishing it up and everything before I uploaded it. And so this basically really doesn't make any sense. So what we ended up doing, or I ended up doing, was I fixed this launch, because this, if you have this code, just get rid of it and you're going to replace it with this. So you're just going to set the, because what happened was inside of the bomb script, it was doing a double offset thing. And so you're going to basically take that out. So take out this part of the launch, or you can just basically go download a new version of this file, which is in the Bombman controller. And so we take these out, and you're going to put an offset of actually 0.25, and you're going to check the player's position in relation to Bombman's position, and you're going to multiply the offset by -1 if the player happens to be to the left of Bombman. And then instead of this vector that we end up creating, we're just going to pass the player's actual position, because the calculation happens in the bomb script, I believe. I'll have to double check that. And so that's to fix the launch function. And then in the jump function, there was a couple of cases where he was jumping forward but using his backward animation, and that's because I only had half of the check here, and so I got the other case here. So this is the other case for checking to use the forward-looking jump. So you update the code on the jump animation line here over in the jump. Now he'll have the right animation whether he's jumping forward or backward, and depending on the direction and everything. So that solves those two things. And then taking a look inside of the bomb script, the launch, so it'll take that offset and just add it to wherever the player's X is and adjust accordingly. So that's the only change that you need to make, and then you'll be all current. So we can close out of that. So back to our last project, which is the bomb man, which we created. What we're going to do is we're going to extend out the scene a little bit, because we're going to be moving him down past the broken highway, where the mock checkpoint is located. And so we're going to have our boss fight over there. So we're going to make a couple of changes to this first, and then we're going to actually make some other changes that I came across that there's some problems, because I've been stuck in the scene for a couple of the videos. I didn't realize that when I did the color swap video, it actually broke the intro scene, and there's an error that gets thrown because I updated the prefab Mega Man, but it didn't update the Mega Man that was in that scene. So we got to fix that too. So there's a lot of fixes and changes that are going to be in this video before we start moving on to actually making out the boss fight stuff. So to begin with, what we're going to do is we're going to add in a couple of screwdrivers just so that we can get some points before we make it to the boss. So we're going to go over to our prefabs and the enemies, and we're going to drag in a screwdriver, and then we can duplicate that screwdriver and rename it. And then we're just going to move these up here underneath the bomb man. And first screwdriver, what we're going to do is we're going to put him over here on this first broken highway here. And so the position for that is going to end up being, and I should have fixed this before, but it's too late now. So -11.00508, and then the Y is going to be, because it's based off of the it's close to where Mega Man's on the ground, and so for the ground check collision and everything, even though this guy doesn't use that, but it's 4.407999. So that's our first screwdriver. But before we do that, we need to change a couple properties on him first. So what we're going to do down here in the enemy controller script, we're going to make it so that he always drops a bonus ball, and we're going to make sure that he always drops a blue one, just so that we don't have to wait for randomized and everything, just so that we get something every time we kill him. Normally it would always be random. So then the second screwdriver, we're going to move to the location of, on the X, -6.47, and then the Y is going to be 2.412. And then we're just going to move this over here because that's where he is right there. To zoom in on him. So he's on the second broken highway. And then he's also going to drop a bonus ball, but it's going to be an orange bonus ball. And so then we're also going to change him so that he's orange, so they're both different. Okay, so those are the two screwdrivers that we're going to add to the scene so that we can have some, get some points and some bonus points, so it works in our score tally at the end. And the next, what we're going to do is we're going to move Bomb Man, and we're going to move him to a location that hasn't been created yet. So we're just going to move him first so he's out of the way. Let's see, where's it? So for Bomb Man, his new location is going to be 22.86, and his Y is going to be -1.14. So let's shrink this down. That brings them to over here, which we haven't built out yet. So then we're going to build that out. So that is going to be, but before we do that, going to make a change to the left wall. Let's see, boundaries, left wall. And actually, you can get rid of the temp, so you can delete the temp. We don't need that anymore. The left wall is going to be same X, same Y, but we're going to widen it up a little bit. So the box is going to be negative 2.14, and then we're going to make the Y 2.8. The size on the X is going to be 0.47, and the Y is going to be 9.2. So we give it a little bit of width here, and I noticed that because of the force, I believe that when Bombman was colliding into the thinner boundaries, he was actually kind of passing through them. So that's why I'm widening these boundaries so that they don't actually, he can't get through with the force of physics pushing him through it. So that's why we're going to widen that. And now the right wall, which is actually down where our mock checkpoint is, we're going to move that to over here to the right side of Bombman. So the X on that is going to be 26.5 and the same Y of 0, but the width and the height, well, first the offset X was going to be negative 1.7 with a Y of 0.02 with a width of 0 or X of 0.47 for the box collider, and then the Y is going to stay at 3.5. So there we got a little bit of it's a lot thicker now. So that's for the wall boundaries. Now we're going to change the ground. We're going to extend the ground. So we're going to go to the first ground that doesn't have any sub numbers on them. We're going to change that. So ground is going to be staying at 0, 0, but the box offset is going to be on the X is 9.6 with a Y of same Y negative 1.41, but the X size is going to become 30.75, and then the same Y on the size. So now if we take a look at this and if I highlight the right wall, you see this is where our battle zone is going to end at right here. Now what we're going to do is end up moving the left wall. How we moved it to the left of the checkpoint. Well, after we make it to the boss, it's going to be moved over here to box them both into this area so that they can have their battle. And so the next thing we're going to change to extend our scene out is we can shrink up the grounds and the boundaries. We're going to adjust the size of the sky. So choose the sky background. And what we're going to do with that is the Y, the X is going to change to 5. So we bring it over some. But we're going to change the scale to 50 on the X, and it's going to stay 15 on the Y and the same Z. So now if we shrink this down, it's a little bit wider, it's moved over and it's wider. So now it covers more of our game space here. So that's for the sky. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple new backgrounds. So we're actually going to be duplicating this one that we've been using for most of the a lot of the tutorial series is this one that we originally started with. We're going to duplicate that. So we're going to create a 6 and a 7. So we're going to duplicate that. We're going to call that one 6. And then we're going to duplicate that and we'll just call that one 7. Then we're going to drag that one up there and then drag the 7 underneath of that. And on the 6, we're going to change the position on that one. So that first one's going to be 19.2. And if we shrink this out, you can see it as it happens. We can probably shrink this down. And then the second one, which is BG7 that we just created, we're going to highlight that. And we're going to change the X on that. And the X on that's going to be 23.04. So there. So this is our extended scene. So with those backgrounds and the ground, which we can't really tell, but it's right there. There's the ground that we've extended out. And then if we look at our boundaries with our right wall, this is where the fight space is going to end. So those are the changes that we do for the scene first. So then what we're going to do is we're going to make a bunch of code changes. And then after the code changes, we'll be able to change some of the properties and the other things that we're going to be having here. But before we do that, let's go take a look at the intro scene and see what's broken with that. So let me save that first. Bring this over so we can come back to that. So go over to your scenes, and then you're going to double click on the intro scene. So here's the intro scene. Now let's play it. Where's it at? Here's it at. We're going to play it, put it on the console, clear these error messages or warnings out, and let's just see what happens. We're going to see what's broken. And then right off the bat. So if we stop there, double click this. So we have a problem with the color swap. So the color swap actually doesn't exist. So let's fix that first. So we can actually just move this out of the way for right now. So go to your player, and the sprite renderer is using the original default sprite material. So we need to change that to color swap. So hit the knob, select color swap, and then you can X out of that. So that part's fixed now. So now if we come back and run it, it's going to tell you the same error. Well, the same error is because, stop. The same error is because when you go to your player, we had a script called color swap, which is not attached to the player, because that's what actually talks to the color swap shader to be able to do the color applying and everything like that. So then you're going to go to your scripts folder and find the color swap script, and then you're going to drag that onto the player. Now the prefab already has all this, but because we added this guy and everything, he has alternate properties. So that takes care of that. So now if we bring it over one more time and run it, now it's telling us this error, the energy bars. So we can stop it and go over here. So the problem with this is that in our scene, we don't actually have the energy bars showing. So therefore making all these, set image, set visibility, calling all these functions on it, it's gonna bomb out because it doesn't exist in that scene where it's not like a fight scene. We're using Mega Man as like in an animation, a little cutscene type deal. So we need to remedy this, and the way we're going to remedy it is we're just going to check if the UI energy bars instance is not equal to null. And so what we're going to do is we're going to wrap that and then put it underneath it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap each of these cases that use the UI energy bar and if not nulls. So I'll pause it here, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go over to my player controller and I'm just going to copy and paste it. So you can go and do that. And so each of these is going to have if not blah blah blah. So I'm just going to copy all this. Oops. Take all this, so all these, so all the UI energy bars. And then we're going to go over here. All these cases, I'm going to replace them. So now if you save that, so now if there's no UI energy bar, it won't call this part. So it'll be fine. There'll be a problem if it's like you call it and swap the color, but then you turn on energy bars, but then we'll have to run into that later. But for right now, this will solve the problem with that. So now if we go back to our scene, clear everything out there, we can save that and run it. Now no more error. So now it'll play through, and what I should have did was when Mega Man actually runs out, he's gray. That was another clue that there was something wrong, because that's the sprites. He's gray. So now when he runs out, he's going to be blue like he's supposed to be because the color swap applies his primary color scheme. So that's the fix for that. So in case you hadn't come across it and you do actually play the game from or our project from the very beginning, because we kind of haven't been since a few videos back, you'll know you would have noticed that before I did. But now I caught it, and now you can fix it. So that's how you fix those issues. And so I'm going to get this out of the way for right now. And I believe there's something else. We're going to come back and we're going to see what the next changes are going to be. Okay, so first things we're going to change is we're going to add a new parameter or a new line of code to each of the play functions inside of the sound manager. So if you don't have the sound manager open, you can go to the project, go to scripts, and then open it from there. Highlight it, press enter, or double click it. It'll open that up. So basically the reason we're doing this is because inside of the we're going to be doing audio looping, and the way we do that is there's a option, or it's not really an option, it's a parameter called time that actually notes where the play, kind of like the marker is where it's playing through an audio clip, at what time position it's currently at playing. So what we do is we manipulate that to have it bounce around so we can stay in a loop. Because I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you actually do notice when you watch the boss fight and you listen to the boss fight, the intro, there's an intro part to it, and then it goes to a part that just constantly loops. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing it from the beginning, and then when we get to a certain point, we're going to look for that time marker, and we're going to revise this point, and then have it stick in this loop, and so we don't play the beginning over again. So you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to that. But first, what we want to do is we're going to say effect source on this. So go into the play function here, and then you're going to do .time, and you're going to set it to 0. So every time we call this function, it's going to reset the time position back to 0, just to be safe. And then we're going to say music source .time is also equal to 0. So those are the two changes that we're going to make inside of the sound manager. So just to make sure that every time we call these functions, the time marker is always put back at the very beginning when we play the clip. Because if we don't, there might be a point where we play a different clip and it'll just play at the last time marker position because we keep using the same object over and over. So we don't want that to happen. Okay, so that's the first change. The next change we're going to do is inside of the intro scene script, and it's down here in the start function. If you looked over there at the sound, it's like we have a play music function, and I don't know why I wasn't using that. I mean, but so what we're going to do is we're going to use the play music function. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that. First parameter is the clip, so we can move that, and then the second parameter, if we actually hover over this, is the if you want to loop the music or not. And so we're going to get rid of this line. We're going to get rid of the loop because the loop is the second parameter. And by default, we have this function that's going to say to loop it is true, but we didn't want to loop this, so we're going to set it to false. And so this shortens it up a little bit. So the volume is not part of this, so you still have to do that. But you're going to pass the clip and whether you want it to loop or not into the play music function for the class. So then you can save that. So that's the change we're going to make into the intro scene. It's just a little tidy up type deal. And then we'll move on to the next change. So the next change we're going to be making is inside of the item script. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to be attaching events to when bonus items get collected, so that we'll know that they were collected. So in case we want to attach a function that gets called when it gets collected, and then you can have something happen upon that. The reason we're doing that in this case is when the weapon part gets collected, we want to know so that we can cue the victory music and do the next part of the sequence, because otherwise when the boss is defeated, the music stops, and Mega Man can actually run around indefinitely until he collects the weapon part. So what we want to do is we want to know when that weapon part is collected, and we're going to do that by using an event. So top of here, we're going to add in using Unity engine.events. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here to where these weapon part colors and everything is. And then what I'm going to do is we don't need this one anymore. We're going to go to the item script. And these are the things that we want. So let's do this. Copy these lines. Back over here. Alright, there's also this, which we're going to get to the weapon part. I'm just going to put this in here for now, but the weapon parts don't actually denote, it's just a weapon part, but it doesn't actually denote what enemy it belongs to. So we're adding this in as well. So we got a new enum list here called weapon part enemies. And first one's going to be none, where we just put, you're going to use that as default, but otherwise weapon parts are always tied to enemies. And then we're just going to say each enemy name, and then we can, when we define the weapon part, we can say what enemy it's for. So when it gets collected, then we'll know what weapon to activate for what Mega Man later. So that's the reason for this. And then the next one's actually, we're going to put a header here that's called bonus item events, and we're going to define a Unity event. We're going to call it bonus item event. And so the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go down to on collision 2D. Down here where we know where the player collides with these items and can collect them. And so over here, so what we want is this. I'm going to copy that, and that's after the bonus points. And then this. And that's going to be after, and that's going to be after the item sound. And we have an error there on the player, and we'll get to that because we have a new one that says apply weapon part, which we don't have yet. So let's just save that for right now. So we're going to say if our item type, which is defined at the top, which is defined whenever we define it. When we create a bonus item, we'll know what kind of type it is. So what we want to do is we want to check if the item type is equal to weapon part, and then there's going to be a function we're going to create over in the player controller called apply weapon part, and then we're going to pass the weapon part enemy name. So what enemy did this weapon part belong to? So which boss battle did we just face off in and win? And then what we're going to do down here is we're going to check if our bonus item event is not null, and if it's not, then we're going to invoke it. So we can call that function. Okay, weapons collected. Call that function wherever it may exist and whatever it may encode, and then do something accordingly. So then we're going to do the player controller. So now these are new additions to the player controller. And so that's it for the item. Oops. Should have that plugged in. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the player controller. So in the player controller, the first thing we're going to do is in our player weapon structure here, we're going to add a new field, and it's going to be a public bool, and we're going to be calling it enabled. Now, I haven't completely thought this all out yet. I was going to basically try and do the weapon applying to Mega Man in this video, but it's already going to be way too long just for the whole boss fight thing. So it's actually going to be the follow-up video after this. It's going to be weapon item collection. And that's where we're going to actually enable the weapon on Mega Man. So after this video, we beat Bomb Man, we got his weapon, and then we're going to be able to use it on Mega Man. So that'll be the next video. But to know whether these weapons have been captured or not, we need a flag in here in our structure, which is basically defined when we have each of our weapons, our default, our magnet beam, bomb man, etc., etc. And we're going to know whether it's enabled or not so we can have it if we're able to use it or not. So we're going to have this here. It's going to be called enabled. And then the next bit is we're going to come down here. This start all energy bars, that full thing, we're just going to take that out for right now. We're going to cut that. You can save this. And then we're going to add it to a new function. And let me see here. It's going to be down here. which those are the things we already changed. And it's going to be after this apply weapon energy. So we're going to create a new function here, and it's going to be a public. We're just going to say public void fill weapon energies. And we're just going to drop that in there. So that's that. So then what we're going to do is I'm going to check, okay, so those are all the other changes that we did. So then we have a new one, which is over in, so we were done with this script, so we can close that. Player controller. And it's going to be called apply weapon part. So we're going to copy this bit and put it after fill weapon energies. So save that. Okay, so apply weapon part. So this is going to be from the item script, and then we're going to say what weapon, which enemy did we defeat to get this part. So we're going to switch upon that, which is basically, go back up to the top of the item script. So the values are going to be either none, bomb man, cut man, basically enemy names. And so when we go in here, we're going to look for if it's bomb man, and when our weapon struct, we're going to use our player weapons enum at the top. If it's equal to bomb man, we're going to enable it. So that's basically all this does. So for each of these, we're going to enable, and if it's none, we basically just ignore it. We don't even do anything for the none option. So we're going to enable whatever weapon that we've collected. And then last but not least, what we're going to do is down here in the take damage, we're going to check and see if our same problem, so as like with above. So if our energy bar doesn't exist, so what we're going to do is we're going to say if UI energy bars dot instance is not equal to null, then we want to be able to make use of it. So we don't want to use this if it's not around, because otherwise it's going to throw up an error and cause problems. So then we can save that. So those are all the changes that we're going to be making to the player controller. And then let's move on to the next one. So the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to import our audios that we're going to be using for the our boss fight battle music and our victory theme. So what we're going to do is go back over to Unity, and you're going to go into your audio and then music folder, where we already have the two clips that we use, like this one that we use for the intro theme or the intro scene, and then this is for our main scene. So we're going to import the two, and you can go up to GitHub, links in the description of the video, go over into Project 21, the assets, and then the audio and music, and then you can get these two MP3s. So one's called Boss Battle and the other one's called Victory Theme. So we're going to drop those into the project. There. So now if we actually listen to the boss battle, you can hear what I'm talking about. When I was talking about, basically it starts with like a little bit of an intro, and then it's basically like a constant loop. So let's play that. So that's the intro, and this is basically the looping part. So it just keeps going, and then it loops at the high point there. And there's a loop again. So that's basically where it loops. And I got these out of a YouTube video and just stripped out the audio because I couldn't find it anywhere else. So the quality is a little bit lower than the other music. So when we actually build out this in the project, we set the audio to the volume all the way up to 1, so it's not as bad. And so that's the boss battle, and the victory theme is this one. So this is when he captures the weapon part. And then we do the point tally. So we already have the point tally audio. So those are the two audio clips that we need to use. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over into the asset palette, and we're going to add some stuff into here. So right now it's only got the enemy prefabs and then the item prefabs. We don't really use this enemy prefabs one anymore. This is when we were building out there, doing the wave thing way early in the series. We don't really use this anymore, but we can, make use of it possibly later on. And then these are all the bonus items that can get dropped. And so what we're going to do is over in the asset palette, we're going to put back in the start function, which we took out a long time ago. And we're going to add these things. So let's drop those in. Here. Okay, so that's that. Backspace that, save that. Okay, so we create a serialized of an audio clip. This is going to be point tally clip. This is going to be the tally clip, and if we actually go over here, let's go find that audio. It's in the sounds, and it's 27 here. So if we play that, so that's, and I noticed way long time ago, all these audio that I found off that one website, they all have this leading and trailing silence, and that's because of MP3s, I believe. These are WAV files, you'll be able to crop these off. So if you actually try to crop these off, I believe in like Audacity or any other audio program, and you save it, it actually will put it back in. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why, and it's just a problem with MP3s. So if you were actually to convert these all to WAV files, then you'd be able to chop off this leading and trailing audio. And if you ever thought, oh, why is there like this little bit of a delay whenever he's landing on the ground? And it's like, it's nothing in your project, it's actually the audio files. So found that out the hard way. But anyway, we're going to leave them as MP3s. It's not a big deal. But if you wanted to, you can convert them all to WAV files, truncate off the leading and the trailing silence, and then you'll be good to go. So this is the point tally. And so the point tally is, this is basically the part that's going to end up repeating when the score gets tallied up. And then this is kind of like the ending part where it goes did it, and then this is the da 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 part. So we're going back over here. So our point tally clip, if we go over to our, let's see here, we have a manager prefab now, our game manager, which now makes use of, well, which has been making use of the asset palette. So now we have these options here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go drop in the point tally into the first slot. So we save that. So we can save and we go back, and then our game manager and all the other scenes, it should have it, and over on our main scene it should have it as well. So going back to the code, so these two are we're going to be generating. We're not going to, if you wanted to, you could actually take that, chop it up yourself into two different files, but we're going to do it a little bit different because I want you to learn how to do this part. So there's two ways of doing it. You can do it the hard way by chopping it up manually into two different files and then just attaching those to these audio clips on the script. Or what we're going to do is we're going to dynamically generate them. And so these are going to be basically pointed to from what we generate here. So these are going to stay empty the whole time. This is the one, this is the original clip. So in our start function, what we're going to do is we're going to call this function that we have down here called create point tally subclips. And what we're going to do is first we're going to do is we're going to check and see if we forgot to assign it. And if it has been assigned, then we're going to create our subclips. So there is the audio clip. It's got a create function, which actually lets you create an actual audio clip manually or through code. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create the looping part, and this is basically sample length. Sample length is, if you open it up in Audacity and switch it over to samples, I'd show you how to do that, but I really don't want to open it up right now. But if you switch it to samples in the bottom, there's a time marker there or a length marker. If you hit the little knob to the right of it, there's an option that says samples. And so if you click into the parts of your audio, it'll update that location and you'll see where the samples are. Because normally it defaults to hours, minutes, seconds, and even milliseconds or hundreds of a second, etc. So you can actually switch it to samples and then you'll be able to get those numbers. So the length of our clip for the point tally that we want the loop is actually 2,465 samples. So that's where I get that number. That's actually the length that I determine how many sample length that is. And then what we do is we use the original to get the channels, if it's 2-channel audio, etc., and the frequency. And I forgot what the last one is, to stream, so we say false. And so that's the loop. And then we do the same thing with the point tally end, which is the second part of that audio clip. And that sample length is this much, 5,938 samples. And same we get the channel and frequency, etc. So once we have those clips created, now we need to actually, basically have created them this length, but they're empty. So what we need to do now is actually get the audio from the original and dump it into the new clips that we created. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the sample length times the number of channels. So if it's 2 channels, it's actually twice as many samples that you're going to be pulling, and you store them as floats. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take that float and then starting, this is the start position, so you're going to use get data from audio.get data, and you're going to basically fill this array that you created up here, starting from this offset. That's basically where you skip the silence in the beginning of it, and you're going to store it into this float. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take that and you're going to store it in the clip that you created, which is the loop clip that's empty right now, but now it's not going to be empty. And you're going to start at an offset of 0. So you're going to fill it completely with that data that you collected from the original clip. Then you're going to do the same thing for the loop. So it's the same exact thing, except this is the offset that you're going to be starting at, and etc., etc. So, is it the offset? Yeah, it's an offset. Anyway. And then you're going to get that and you're going to store it in there. So, oh yeah, it's because it's the last one I play the whole from the beginning and the end, so without the silence on the front and the back. So the end one is like with the beginning and the end together. That's why it's the same offset. I forgot. Otherwise, this is just the first part. So if we go back over to the project, just so I'm talking about. So if we look at the point tally. So the second one's going to be, so this is where the sample starts at. So the loop is going to be from like here to somewhere like around here. I don't remember exactly. So this part's going to loop over and over, and when you play the end, it's going to play this up to here. So it's going to include this and have the first part as well. So that's why they use the same offsets in the beginning. So now that you have your 2 clips created, they're stored in this audio clips here, and you're going to be able to use them in your project for our ending score tally to play the audio clips. So now let's move on to the next part. So the next change we're going to make is over in the enemy controller script, and this is going to be able to have use of the energy bar that we created for the enemies in the color swap energy bar video, which I think was number 19. And then we're going to add in a action to be able to tie into the bonus item event. So first thing we're going to do is up at the top here, we're going to add another public here, and it's going to be a bool, and it's going to be called has health bar. So this is going to be a flag whether this enemy is going to be able to have a health bar or not. And then we're just going to add a header here. And I'll type this out, so I'm just going to take this, copy that. So we're going to add a header here. This is called enemy settings for the score stuff and all that, and then the damage and the contact and health and all that. And then what we're going to do down here, after our velocity under bonus item settings, we're going to say public unity action. And it's going to be called a bonus item action. And so this is going to be basically tied to the event. So next part, what we're going to do is we're going to go down into the take damage. So under take damage, now right now we don't have anything that has to do with the health bar. So go down here, we're going to copy this. And then we're going to drop that in. That was after the clamp. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a test here to see if this enemy has the health bar and the energy bar instance isn't null. So if both of those 2 cases are positive, then we're basically going to affect the value of the energy bar, in this case being the enemy health. So if they have a health bar and it's not null, then we're going to basically change it like we do with the player, where you can see how much health they have left on the screen. And so the next part is what we're going to do is we're going to go down to start defeat animation. Let's go down to that. get that. So on line 138, copy that. It's going to be after the weapon part color. So what we're going to do is we're going to check and see if the bonus item action isn't null, and if it's not null, what we're going to do is we're going to attach that action onto the listener. So you can't, as far as I know, I'm not a Unity expert by any means, as far as I know, you can't tie two listeners to each other, but you can attach actions to listeners. So I'm going to explain a little bit why we end up doing this, why we have an action and why we have this listener, and it has to do with whether the bonus item gets dropped from the enemy, or the weapon, in this case the weapon part, but any bonus item, if the bonus item is going to get dropped by the enemy, or if it's going to be just put in the scene manually and dropped on its own, or it's just going to be sitting there for them to pick it up. And so when it's inside, when the enemy actually, from the enemy controller, ends up dropping this, you're going to have an action that gets tied on the listener. But if the item is already in the scene, then you're just going to take your function or whatever, and you're going to tie, it's not going to be an action at that point, but you're going to tie it to the listener that way. And when we get to manipulating the main scene, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we're going to check and see if we have an action on this, basically this bonus item, and boom, then we're going to basically, it's the same thing, it's just a different way of doing it. They all end up leading to the same point where the bonus item script calls the event. So those are all the changes we're going to be doing in the enemy controller. And then the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to be making a change to Bomb Man. So a little bit more modification to Bomb Man this time. And so what we're going to do in Bomb Man is I'm going to change the distance for where we start throwing bombs. Because when I was testing this out and building out the scene, basically he ends up kind of throwing bombs right away. And I want him to jump right away. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say player distance is greater than or equal to, and what we had before is a half a unit, but we're actually going to say it's 1 unit. So if Mega Man is 1 unit or greater in distance away, then he's going to start throwing bombs. But if he's within that 1 unit, then he's going to jump. So when we build out our scene and Mega Man runs up to him and he stops in front of him, it's actually within the 1. So the first thing Bomb Man's going to do, he's going to jump away. That's what I want to do, because that's pretty much what he does in the actual game. First thing he does is he jumps. He doesn't just start throwing bombs. He jumps from Mega Man and then he starts launching bombs. So that's the first thing we're going to change inside of the Bomb Man. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the pose. And we need to expose pose as being a public function so that we can make use of it outside through a different script. So we're going to make pose a public function. So we use it when we animate, we toss our bomb up when the health bar starts incrementing and right before the battle starts. So we're going to have like a little intro animation. So we're going to toss the bomb up with pose. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add on to throw. We're going to make that public too, so in case we ever wanted to have him throw a bomb through script outside of his AI and just chuck a bomb. So we're going to do that. And then we're also going to do it on jump. So on jump, we're going to make that public too. So those are those changes. Then we're going to do one more change. Actually, 2 more changes. And this has to do with when I was building him and testing it out, he didn't seem too menacing. He was actually able to be defeated so quickly, and I'm just thinking, what did I must have did something wrong. It's like I just couldn't put my finger on it right away, and he was basically kind of, dying too quick. And so what I ended up, I watched the video, where I started playing him on the original, and then I noticed is like, oh my gosh. So when he takes a hit, he goes invincible. He doesn't flash. I mean, he flashes like the hit bubble and everything. But I noticed when you hit him once, he makes the sound of taking damage. But if you keep shooting, he keeps taking it. You don't hear it, and his bar wasn't going down. So he has invincibility. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I actually forgot that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go down to take damage, and we're going to give him invincibility, just like Mega Man has invincibility. So right here, after is taking damage, we're going to use the enemy controller, not the class, but the object, and then we're going to use our invincible, and we're going to set it to true. So as soon as he takes damage, he's going to take that damage. Well, this is the callback, and then he's going to go invincible. He's going to flash, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then after he's done flashing, we're going to put him back to, you guessed it, back where he's not invincible anymore. So there. So that solves that issue. So as soon as he takes a hit, he's going to go invincible. You can shoot him as many times as you want, but as soon as the splashing sequence is done, he's going to go back to where he can take damage again. So that makes him a lot harder than he was before. And that's more in line with how the game has him actually react. I wasn't really timing this all that much to see if it's like 8 flashes is enough. I think it's good enough. So we're not going to increase it or decrease it. We're going to leave it at 8. So those are all the changes that we're going to make to Bomb Man. So let's see what's next. Alright, so the next change we're going to do is with the Game Manager. There's actually going to be a whole lot of changes with the Game Manager. Because they all depend upon the scene playing out and everything like that with the boss fight. So we're going to do changes here, and then our final script that we're going to be making changes is the main scene. So there might be, I don't know, we may do a little back and forth between these two, but I don't think so. I'm just going to do changes here and then do the changes there, and I'll explain here, and that's probably maybe where I'll do the back and forth. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to import another namespace, and this is going to be system link. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to change the bonus ball. Right now it's currently or the bonus score variable. Currently right now it is a integer. But before we do that, we're going to come down here to player score. We're going to add in a new int. It's going to be called level points. So the way I envision this, because I haven't built that scene out yet, so I don't really know how all these things are truly going to tie into each other, but once the enemy is selected from the stage select screen, it's going to randomly pick a value, because I've noticed it's not always the same. But by this, we're just going to default to 50,000 for Bomb Man, but the stage select screen is going to randomly pick the value of the enemy, and then what it's going to do is I think it's going to pass it over to the game manager and store it here. So right now I have the main scene doing that, but we're going to get rid of that code when we get to that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the ball count. We don't need that anymore, because what we're going to do instead is, instead of this being an integer, we're going to make it a list of type integer. So we're going to store these bonus items as a list, and then we're going to say new list int. And so it's going to be basically a collection of integers. And so next thing, this next part. Now this is also very preliminary. I don't know if this is what's going to end up being. But obviously our player is... Oh yeah, that's stuff. We'll get down there and fix that. Our player, like I said, this is very preliminary. Our player is he's not a persistent object between scenes like the game manager and the sound manager are. So we need a way of saving how much health his weapons, or not, how much energy and stuff his weapons have. So I'm going to save them in the game manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of his weapons that he has and store them in the game manager and apply them between scene changes and stuff like that. But like I said, this is very preliminary. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I already have it in here, and so we're going to include it for now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to Start Main Scene. And inside of Start Main Scene, let's go down to that. So under Start Main Scene, we're going to take this function that we haven't created yet. I'm going to copy that, drop that after the ready delay. So this is going to be where we restore the player weapons, so when the scene starts. The next thing we're going to change is the audio. Kind of clean it up and use that play music function. So instead of all this stuff here, we're going to shrink all that down. to just that. So the only thing we're going to have outside the function is actually the volume, and by default it loops, and so this is the revised version of that. So we're going to save that. The next bit we're going to change is down here in the actual game loop, and what we're going to do is we're going to disable this update score thing. We don't use that anymore, and we're going to disable repositioning in the enemies. We'll probably do that later at some point. But right now we don't have where our enemies are going to get spawned dynamically through a scene. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in this block here. That's going to be after the destroy stray bullets. So there, scene change, save, and we're going to define that. And right now we don't have when the scene ends to go back to the level select. So right now we're just going to loop the same scene over for now. And we'll get to that later when we'll get to building out the level select screen. Next thing we're going to do is come down here to the add bonus points. We're going to fix this so this is no longer the case for that. And we're going to make use of the list. And then boom. So there. So now we're going to just add the bonus points to the list. And then we took out the counter because the list will return the count. So if you use the variable .count, it tells you how many items are in the list. So we save ourselves of having an extra variable. Next thing we're going to do over here is this freeze player. We're just going to make it public so we can use it in other places in case we ever wanted to. We're going to do the same thing with freeze enemies. We're going to make that public. And freeze bullets. So now that's public as well. And then we're going to add in our two functions that we haven't defined yet. So it's going to be save player weapons and restore them. So let's go over here after the teleport. So there. So save player weapons. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for the player. This is the same thing we've been doing in other places. And if the player is not null, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the player weapon structure that has all their weapon data in it, and we're going to store it in the variable that's inside, or the array that's inside of the game manager. And then the opposite, to restore it, we're going to look for the player, and if the player is not null and our array is not null either, which means it hasn't been actually updated with anything yet, and then we're going to take it and we're going to apply it and then do it reverse. We're going to take ours from the game manager and apply it to the player. So they should restart wherever in the game when this is run with whatever the previous settings inside the weapon array was. So that's all that does. The next bit we're going to do is we're going to go down here to player defeated, and we're going to remove this stuff. We're going to get rid of this, because we're going to actually tidy that up and just create a new function for that. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to take this, copy that, drop that there. So we're going to have a new function that we're going to create. It's going to be called destroy weapons. It's just going to remove all the weapons off the screen, and then when the player is defeated, we're going to save the current settings of the weapons at that point. And like I said, this is preliminary, and I don't know if this is really going to working with the logic and everything of where to do these things, but we're just going to try it out for now and put it there. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to update score. Even though we don't use this anymore, in case somebody is still using it, we're going to make use of that namespace link, and we're going to make use of our list, because now this bonus item thing is a list. So our bonus score variable is a list. So what we're going to do is we're going to say sum. So player score, we're going to take the sum of the bonus balls, and then what we're going to do is take out this count, because we don't care about the count. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set it back to 0 or nothing. We're going to use the clear function on it. And so that clears out the list. So the list is back to empty. So we took the sum of the score, added it to the player score, and we reset the variable or the list back to nothing. So which is effectively like setting everything to 0. So that is the change for that. Now we have a big chunk that we're going to be doing down here after destroy stray bullets, which we're going to do here. Now I may have to come back and explain this this section, because it kind of depends upon the other stuff being there first. So I'm going to maybe just do it really quick. We're going to drop this in, and then the score, this all has to do with the score. And then I believe this one is going to be included too. Yeah, so then this reset points collected. So internal, yeah, so right before internal. So we're going to drop that, backspace that, and save that. Okay, so now, back up here. Okay, destroy weapons. So this code that I deleted up above there, we just kind of moved it down here into destroy weapons. And we have a new one in here called bombs, which leads me to what I forgot to note before, was we need to add a new tag. So actually go back over to the project, go into your prefabs and weapons. Right now you have a bullet that's tagged bullet, but your bomb is not tagged with anything. So we're going to add a new tag, and we're going to call it bomb. And so now if we go back to our bomb, we're going to tag it with the word bomb. So now we can search for bombs in our scene, and so we can remove them or do whatever you need to do. Can't freeze them. I was thinking about that after the fact. It's like we don't have a freeze function for the bomb, so we may have to do that later. Right now we're not going to worry about it. But we'll deal with that at another date when it comes up. But feel free to take it upon yourself to do that. You know how to freeze a bullet. It's the same concept with freezing a bomb. You're just going to have to go update the bomb script to have a freeze function. So, alright, so destroy all weapons. So when we call this, it's basically going to find all the bullets, remove them from the scene. It's going to find all the bombs, remove them from the scene. Any explosions that are going on, remove them from the scene. And the only explosion that doesn't get removed from the scene is the version 3 explosion, which is the big explosion. So those should still be remaining after the fact, because that wasn't tagged with the word explosion. That was on purpose. Because first the player was using that big explosion, but now our enemies use it too. Okay, so now here we have a public function called tally player score. This is going to be called from the main scene or any other scene, and it's going to start this coroutine. Now all this coroutine does is going to show clear points. You notice from the video, there's actually, if this goes down to the next line, then there's an indent, and because of the way I have the text on the screen, it's centered, it doesn't look right, so all I do is just put clear and then points underneath and it stays centered. So it's not exactly like the game, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And then we set the properties for our screen message text, which is TextMesh Pro. And then we have the we use a format thing here, and then we pass in the font size, etc. And then, like I said, we're going to get to this tally thing. And what we do is we wait, because this is a coroutine, we're going to wait to do certain things. So we show clear points, then we do the score add up, which is through this loop here. And then we yield some more time, and then we add on something else, and we have this new string here that says Sprite bonus items index 16. Well, what the heck is that about? Well, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to be creating a Sprite asset based off of our bonus items thing, so we can actually include those graphics inside of our TextMesh Pro strings. Ooh, that sounds kind of cool, right? So to mimic having the ball next to the 1000x, 1000 times however many balls it collected, we're going to use a sprite asset, and it's going to be the orange bonus ball item, and it's going to be part of our string that we have on the string. So now we're going to see how do we do that part. So you're going to learn how to, that's something new that we're going to learn today. And then we would basically play the loop clip, da-da-da-da-da, and we do the bonus item stuff, and then we play the last clip here, and then we do this. We check to see if the bonus count is greater than 0, we do the looping part. Otherwise, we just shoot it out the screen, play the end clip only, and it would obviously be 0 because we didn't have any points to tally. So this would never get updated beyond 0 because that happens up down here. So that's that, and then we have a function here that just says reset points collected, and we have an option here that says reset player score. So whenever you die, which we haven't gotten to yet, lives, and when you get lives, your score basically disappears when you basically have to continue or go back to stage reset or stage select. So we have a flag here that's by default will say false. We don't want to reset the player score, but we do want to reset the level points and reset the bonus score. So no more bonus balls collected. So that should happen upon each entry into whatever level that we're going to go and play. So for dying and everything like that. And the rest of this is all the same. So those are the changes that we're going to make. And like I said, we're going to come back to this tally score stuff to explain this more in depth when we actually build out the scene for the actual boss fight. So now that we've came to this part about the whole sprite thing, we're gonna go and do that now. So go back over to Unity, go over to your graphics folder here, and look for the Mega Man items. Now these are all the bonus items, right? We use this for our bonus item script and etc. So these are all cut out. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on that image, and we're going to go up here to create, and then we're going to go to TextMesh Pro, and then we're going to create a sprite asset. And so what it's going to do is it's going to create this new item here that's called Mega Man items. So I'm going to rename this to bonus items first, and then we're going to move it. So go down at the bottom of your list over here and expand TextMesh Pro, expand resources if it's not already expanded, and then you're going to drag it into Sprite Assets. So drag your thing that got generated and put it inside of Sprite Assets. Now you already have one here, emoji one, which I think is a default that comes with it. It's got like the little happy faces and stuff like that. So we have bonus items now. And you're going to have this thing here where it's got the character table. These are all the sprites that got cut out, and they basically created like, I guess you can say characters for each of them, so you can use them in your strings. And you have the glyph table, which has like the dimensions and everything like that. And so what we're going to do is we need to fix each of these, which is kind of a pain in the butt because the alignment doesn't work right when you're putting in a string. It's going to kind of like be baseline or on the bottom line. So we're going to make them so that they start out centered, you know. So what you're going to basically do for each one of these, and I'm going to pause it. I'm going to do the first one, and we're going to pause it, and then we're going to go through the rest of them at the end. So you're going to basically change the bx value to 0, and where it says by here is going to be the same as the height, which is h, so that's going to be 12. So each one's going to be, the x is going to be 0, and the y is going to be the same as the height. So go through each of these, and then I'll meet you back here, and then they should all be changed. Okay, so all these are changed, they all got zeros, and then all the way down. Don't forget, you gotta go to the next page too, because you're only on the page 1. So go to the next page and do the same thing for all these. Be right back. Okay, back. So we changed it on all these too. So all the bx's are 0, and the by's are all the same as the heights. So, and then here's are all the bonus balls. So let's just save all those changes. And so this is the ball that we're interested in showing inside of our score string. And so that's number 16. And so the way we do this is you need to know the index number and you need to know the name of this file here, or what, because we renamed it. So we renamed it to bonus items. And so this string, this tag here is basically going to give it the name and you're going to give it the index. So this is how we know we want to use the orange bonus ball image. So for instance, if you wanted to use the 1-up, you just still use bonus items for the name, but then it'd be index 12, and then it would show the 1-up picture instead in the string. So that's how you can actually add in images into your TextMesh Pro strings by using Sprite Assets. So let's save all that again just to make sure, and then we're going to move on to the next, which is the big chunk of changes, and that's going to be for the main scene. So let's go find main scene. And let's go back up to the very top and start from there, and then I will be right back. Alright, so what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in that called next scene flag, which we have in the intro and the title. So we're going to drop that in after these runs. So this is our flag to know if we want to call the next scene, and so it only gets called one time. The next change we're going to have is on our audio clips. So I'm just going to take all these 3 and replace the first one, which is this. Just replace that with that. So we already had music clip, but now what we're going to do is on our scene we're adding two new ones, and they're both going to be public, and we're going to add in the boss fight clip, or boss battle, however you want to call it, and the victory theme clip, which is the one after he collects the weapon part. So this is when the fight starts, and this is for when the weapon part is collected, and does that one sound. So those are the changes for that little bit of section. Then we're going to add on to the characters and objects. So let's get that. We're going to take those, and we're actually adding two new ones. I'm just going to place this so the comments with it. And so we're adding on enemy and weapon part. So the enemy is obviously going to be the enemy boss that's on our level. This is, in this case, we're battling Bomb Man, so it's going to be Bomb Man's reference. And then the weapon part reference. Now, I'm going to show you two ways that we can do this. What we're going to do is we're going to settle on having the weapon part separate from the actual enemy, and so it drops higher, because normally it's going to explode out of the enemy and kind of pop up like the bonus balls do when you're shooting like the enemies on the screen. And then they kind of pop out and then they land on the surface. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to have the weapon part separate, so it drops out of the sky and lands on the ground, much like the game does. But I'm going to show you how to do both ways and how you tie in the listener and the action and all that too. So let's save those. Next, what we're going to do is these are going to be number ones. These are the first sequence. The second sequence is when he actually reaches the end of that empty area, and then it's going to take over him running on to the next scene and then getting in front of Bomb Man. So those are going to be second set of timeline takeover positions, you could say. So that's for that. So the next thing we're going to do is we need to add in a 1 on this, because this is the first wall. So the first position that we move our wall to is actually right, and we hit the fake checkpoint. And so we need a second wall position, so we're going to just rename this to number 1. And so then we need the boss battle stuff. So here, we're going to take all these and drop these in. And those are going to go right here. Oops. So these are the boss battle stuff. Boss battle world adjustments. So the second sequence, so when the player makes it to this X location, the timeline's gonna start, take over, no more keyboard control, and he's gonna run to this position. So this is the start and this is the end, much like it was up here, the start and the end on that. This is where the wall is going to be moved to in the second time. It'll block them both into the boss fighting area. We're going to change the time offset on the camera so that it moves a little more. I can't remember if it's faster or slower. I think it's slower when it's a lower number. So we're going to move a little bit slower. So if you notice when you're watching it, when I was showing your intro to it, when he gets there, he runs, and then the camera kind of moves over so it sees him as he's running and then getting in front of Bomb Man. So we're going to slow it down a little bit so it doesn't just jerk straight over to the right. And then these are going to be our new camera boundaries for that boss fight area. So we're going to replace them in our camera follow script with these two new vectors. So that's what that's about. And then we have our level states, which we're going to add to. So after checkpoint, we actually have... That's funny. I thought there was one. So after checkpoint, after checkpoint, we're going to just put this whole thing in here. Because I didn't have a boss fight area. Okay. So what we have here, and if you need to see, there's just a semicolon on the end there with another curly brace. We start an exploration, then we reach the hologram, then we keep looking, then we get up to the checkpoint, and then we have a boss fight intro, which is running into the boss fight. And then we have the actual boss fight itself. And then after the boss fight, we have the player victory. And then after the victory and the sound and everything like that, then we move on to the next scene. So that's what that's all about. So we're adding in some new level states, and those are the new level states. Next thing we're going to add in is into the start, which I believe we have a start. Yes, we do. So inside of our start, this is all the same. We're adding in some new stuff here. So we're going to copy this and drop that in. Okay, so let's save that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say how much is set level points. Oh, did I miss one? I must have missed a function somewhere. Set level points isn't in there. Alright, yeah, let's go fix that real quick. Go back over to the game manager. Hold on, I'll be right back. Oops. I must have got so distracted with the publics and everything, I missed this function right here. Because I just jumped down to freeze player. Anyway, so we have this other function, sorry. So back over in game manager, it's called set level points. It's going to be after add bonus points, where we made that change to use a list. So right here, let's drop that in there. So all this does is it's just a function that can get called, and it's going to set the level points to whatever's passed to it. So that's all that does. So now we can get rid of this again, and then go back over to the start on the main screen. So back over to main scene. Alright, so now the error is gone. So, and then weapon part collected, we'll get to this. So we're going to pass in the 50,000. Level select would basically make use of this function to pass in whatever the value is. So it's not the scene's actually doing it, it's the scene, the stage select that'll do it. And then the game manager knows how many points and all that for the tally. And then we have us here in the item script. It's called the weapon part, and we're going to basically add on a listener to our bonus item event, and it's going to be weapon part collected. Now this is the alternate method I was talking about. So if the bonus item, or in this case the weapon part, explodes out of the enemy, then we would use this as an action. We would use the action instead, and then tack on this our function, the weapon part collected. It's much like how we do the scene onload and everything in the game manager. But otherwise, if what we're going to do is we're going to have our weapon part separated, where it's just an element in the scene, like our player or like our screwdriver or any of those, then what we're going to do is we're just going to use the direct add listener event and tack on the function to that, so the event calls this function. So 2 ways to do it. I'm going to show you both of them in action, but we're settling on the end where the weapon part's up in the sky, and as soon as the enemy gets defeated, it drops out of the sky and lands to the ground, much like the game does. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to do is change our sequence start here. So we know that this is basically the exploration where he runs into the hologram, so we renamed that variable to 1. So that's the change there. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to drop in this code to make our lives a little bit easier, so we don't have to keep going through the sequence over and over when we make changes, so we can jump ahead of all of it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look for pressing down the W key on the keyboard for, I just use W for warp, to warp ahead. And what we do is we just we put the player in a new position. We set the camera in a new location. We change the bounds to whatever those bounds were going to be after that transition and everything like that. And we update the level state to the checkpoint state, because we're past the checkpoint. We're in the checkpoint, past the checkpoint area before we hit boss intro. So that's all that this does to jump ahead, so you can skip the hologram part and skip, jumping down all the highways and the transition off the last highway, etc., etc. So that's what this is all about. So let's save all that. And then the next bit we're going to do is the hologram. And the hologram, when we get to the hologram, this is number 1. It should be number 1. It is. So this is the endpoint. So this is the other variable that we renamed. So that's that bit. The next part, it has to do inside of our checkpoint, which is down here, which we actually have absolutely nothing. We don't have anything in the keep looking in there, but we don't have anything here. So we're going to add this. So let's go over to our checkpoint, and it's a whole bunch of code that we're going to go through. So checkpoint, actually I take that back, it's not a bunch of code. It's a boss fight that's a whole bunch of code. But anyway, this whole section here from the checkpoint down is all new, so we're going to take all this boss fight intro, we're going to go through all this, the actual boss fight, the player victory, and the next scene. So we're going to copy that, and then we're going to do it from the case of checkpoint. So this, we're going to replace this with all of this, and save that. And we're going to go through this. Maybe we should go, before we do that, let's do the other things first. So we have that big chunk of code that we're going to drop in, and then we're going to go to our checkpoint reached here, and this is actually wall position 1, because that's the first location of the X that we want to move our wall to, which is going to block us in after our transition to our fake checkpoint. And then we're going to have a whole bunch of new stuff down here after destroy hologram. So right down here at the end, so after destroy hologram, and here we have an enumerator, another coroutine, and the boss defeated, and a weapon part collected. So drop those in, backspace that, save that. Okay, so then let's go back up here to the checkpoint. So what we're doing here in the checkpoint, so we get to the checkpoint area, and that's going to be after the transition on the broken highway. That's kind of like a platform area, and it locks him in to that. And so after that, this checkpoint, the second sequence point that we look for is at the far right of that, and it's right before we get to Bomb Man. So between there and the left wall, there's really nothing other than falling off the platform, not being able to get back up, so you have no choice but to go right or stand there and do nothing. So here we check and see if we reach that second sequence point, and that's where we're going to basically do some more cinematics and take over. So we're going to freeze the input on the player. We're going to set our start time so we can see where our in time function, everything is at. Stop the velocity. This is all the same stuff as the other one when we hit the crate to get to the hologram, and then we change our level state. So this basically kind of stops the player in motion, so he's no more velocity or anything, and then we take over. So then it's going to come down to here, and this is where the whole sequence begins at. We're getting into the boss fight. So what we're going to do, I have comments here. So we're going to run a little bit, and we're going to stop in front of the boss. So this is the second sequence point. We're just checking to see where the player's X is, and we're going to simulate moving him forward. So he's going to run up until that point, and it shouldn't go more than 5 seconds. It's actually, I think, like about a second or so. So we just have enough here just to make sure that this runs enough, and then when we does get to this, it'll just stop. So it's always just stop, 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 stop until this is done playing out. So the next part, at 2 seconds inside of the boss, him running in, we're going to move the left wall to block him in, and we're going to move the camera bounce. So this is where the camera is going to snap over, and it's going to, boom, bounce over to where you see Mega Man and Bomb Man. So what we do is we're going to change the wall position to the second wall position. We're going to move that left wall over to the right, so now they're blocked in. They're blocked into the fight area. And unfortunately, I don't have a nice, cool, like, enemy gate kind of thing where it goes and it opens up and lets them through, and I don't have the flash, but you guys can add that in if you want. It's real easy. So here we're going to change the time offset and the new camera bounce to inside of that area. So it doesn't, the camera's not going to pan around at all anyway. So, but we just set the new bounds in that area there. So that's at 2 seconds. At 3.5 seconds, we're going to stop the music. We're going to set the volume all the way up to 1, and we're going to play our boss fight clip. So that's where the boss fight music is going to start playing at 3.5 seconds in. At 5 seconds in, which is about 1.5 seconds after that, we're going to set the energy bar for the enemy health to 0. And we're going to set it to Bomb Man's color scheme, and then we're going to turn it on so that you can see it. So it's going to show Bomb Man's color scheme, but at first it's going to be all black and empty. And it's going to basically be his color scheme when it has value in it and in increments, in which we're going to basically do in a little bit here. And so down here at 6.5 seconds in, we're going to do his pose, where he tosses up the bomb and catches it, just like in the original game. And then at 7 seconds in, we're going to call this coroutine where it animates filling in the health bar. And so let's go down to that real quick so we can see what that looks like. And so
filling the enemy health bar. So what we do is we check and see what the maximum health is supposed to be on the enemy controller, which by default they're all 28, but just in case you ever want to do something different. So it's 28. We're going to play the energy fill clip, which we created for when we're filling up Mega Man's energy when he's collecting little health items getting dropped. So this is a WAV file that we ended up creating in one of the other videos. It's not an MP3, so this is basically a loop, and we tell it to loop. So this is going to loop playing the energy fill, and while we're doing that, we're going to calculate how many bars, and we're going to increment the bars up, and we're going to have a little bit of a pause here in between each bar increment, and then when it's done, incrementing the bar, so the health's going to go fill up, and then we're going to stop playing the sound. So that's all the enemy fill health bar is. So we're going to fill through a code routine, we're going to fill the enemy health up, and so that's that. At 8.5 seconds in, so which is the second half after that, what we're going to do is we're going to enable Bomb Man's AI. We're going to unfreeze the player so we can take control and start battling Bomb Man, and we're going to move on to the boss fight state. So that's all that does. So that's basically the intro animation to the actual boss fight. So then what we do is down here in the actual boss fight, we don't really do anything. Read all my comments here if you'd like. But what we do is when you're listening to the boss fight or boss battle music, there's a little bit of an intro to it, and this is something new as well that we haven't covered before. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch for this time variable on our music source. So as that music is playing, this time keeps incrementing internally on the music source or the audio source component. And what we're looking for is this is calculated based off of trying to figure out where the looping is best and stuff, and it's trying to look at it in Audacity, and this isn't perfect, I'm sure, but it's close enough. So when the time gets to 15.974 seconds, what I want to do is I loop it back to 3.192. So we reset the time back over here, so basically it's kind of like a self-contained loop because we just keep resetting the marker of where the timeline is inside of while it's playing the audio. So we're stuck in this loop. So that's how you can loop audio and have like a little bit of a opening, and then you loop within the same audio, but like not at the very beginning with another part. So that's how you can loop some audio. So that's all that happens inside the boss fight. We're just looping the audio, and then the actual fights, you're controlling, Mega Man to try and defeat Bomb Man, and Bomb Man's got his AI, and he's battling Mega Man, etc., etc. So then what we do is obviously what we're going to, we check, let's see if we have to rewind this a little bit. So when we started the scene, that's the weapon part, but there's another thing that we haven't done yet in the main scene, so I have to come down here and explain this part here on the boss defeated. Because this is a public void which we're actually going to tie onto the enemy controller. I think it was the enemy controller. Remember we created in the Bomb Man video, we added in this defeat event. And we have the take damage event. So these events will get called if you have a function on it. So you would call it to let us know that these things have happened. So what we want to do in ours is when his health runs out and everything, and we look inside of the enemy controller actually, and we look at the defeat. So I think it's under start defeat animation. Well, it's in the defeat event. It's right. Put it. Yeah, it's right here. So in our defeat function here that gets called from take damage when he runs out of energy, we call the defeat event. So the defeat event is going to have this function tied to it. So as soon as Bomb Man gets defeated, it's going to call this function on top of whatever else it needs to do. So when Bomb Man gets defeated, what we're going to do is we're going to stop the music. We're going to hide his energy bar because it's all black anyway, and we're going to take it off of the screen. We're going to call the game manager and destroy all the weapons that are on the screen, which are like the bullets, the bombs, and the explosions from those bombs. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say weapon part set active is true. Now weapon part is what we haven't added in the scene yet. We're going to do that after all this code stuff. And this weapon part is basically hiding up in the sky. And when we set it to active, it's going to fall from the sky. It's going to show up. It's going to fall from the sky and land on the ground. So that's what the boss defeated event does. And then what we're going to do then is player victory. Player victory doesn't happen yet either, because what we're going to do is we tie the weapon part collected onto the listener. So there's two different events and two different things that happen, and they're basically when these functions are called, it sets everything in motion. So one is when the boss gets defeated, and as soon as that weapon part gets collected, it's going to call this function because we added this onto the listener of the bonus item event. So as soon as that bonus item weapon thing gets captured, this function is going to get called. So down here in this function, what we do is we set the start time again because we're going to have another sequence. And really the only thing that we're doing in the sequence is we're looking for how long things have been running. We're going to set the volume to 1 again. We're going to play the victory theme, but we're not going to loop it. It's not going to be looped. And we're going to freeze the player because once he collects it, we don't want him to be able to run around and do anything. So the player is now frozen. And technically this, I guess, could have been replaced in some of these other spots. Like, now that I made it a public, but whatever, it's fine. And then, so we freeze the player, no keyboard input, player can't move around, he's just stuck on the screen, and then we switch our state to the victory state. So when we get to the victory state, which is here, we're checking our runtime. And now the audio clip is about 7 seconds, so we're frozen on screen, we collect the weapon, and we play that victory theme, da 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 da, or whatever it is. And that's about at 7 seconds, and what we do is we call our score tally. And that's over in the game manager. So the score tally. So we'll get back over to the score tally in a moment. And then after the score is tallied up at about, when it's done playing, there's like if you watch the game, there's about a X amount of a delay. So I say at about 15 seconds, there's enough of a delay for the score to start, finish tallying up. There are no callbacks on this. We're just going to hard code it to 15 seconds. So 15 seconds after this whole thing has been running out and everything like that, we're going to reset the points that we collected, and we're going to go to the next scene. And all the next scene does is, if you watch the scene transition video and everything, it's just going to call the next scene, and then that scene's just going to basically loop and start over. But normally when we get to stage select, it's going to point it to there instead. But right now we just reload the scene and start over. So that's all that does. So to point score, the player, tally the player score. And that's the fun one. So now if we go back over to the game manager and we look at the tally, so now we can explain it more in detail. So all this is going to do is it's going to call this coroutine that I was talking about. So the coroutine down here is this is a string that we start with. All this is going to say at start is clear points. And we put that on the screen. We wait a second. And then we add on the string format so that we can have all 6 zeros. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, how many points are we tallying? And right now it's at 0. How many loops do we want? Well, we're going to take our level points, which is always an even number, luckily. So it's either going to be 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 90,000. Sometimes they've even said it go up to 100,000. And if you beat the Wiley stage, I think that one says it's at 200,000. Anyway, so you're going to take the level points divided by 1,000. That'll give you how many loops you're going to need to do. You're going to play the loop clip and repeat it. So now the loop's going to go da 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 da, and you're going to play your loop here. You're going to tack on 1,000 to the player score, tack on 1,000 to the tally, and then you're going to update the string. So it's going to have that 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. It's going to keep looping, and there's going to be a little bit of a delay in between each loop. And then when we get to the loop -1, we're going to play the end clip, and we're not going to loop that. And then we're going to wait again for another second, and then we're going to update our score string. We're going to tack on this portion to it where it's the bonus items, and we have this sprite asset now for the bonus ball. And it's going to have a bonus ball, then it's say 1000x00, so we got another format here. And then it's going to go to the next line, bonus, and then it's going to have 6 zeros again. So we're going to bonus points tally this time instead of level points tally. And then we're going to loop the clip again for the tally for the da-da-da-da-da sound. And then the same thing where we're going to check and see if there's actually a count. And if there's not a count, then all we do is just put the zeros on screen and play the sound doop, and it's really short. Otherwise, we're going to loop through how many bonus balls we've got and add on the value of each one of those, which by default is always 1,000. So you're going to add on 1,000 to the player score for each ball you got, add on 1,000 to the point tally, which is going to be part of the string at the bottom, and then how many balls you got is always constant, so it's always going to be there. And then you're going to end the clip, and then this is going to be a little bit of a delay in between each for loop. And that's basically the tally. So that's how you tally. And so we do this through the game manager. So if we go back over to the main scene, we tally the score and the next scene, and then that's it. So that's basically how we build out the boss fight. So that's all the code, and now what we need to do is there are actually things in this that we need to change, add on to. So this is the scene that we left off at, but we don't want that scene anymore. What we actually want is the main scene, and we got to update a bunch of things in here. So give me a moment. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is, so we were left off at adding the screwdrivers and doing some of the other things that didn't require any of those code changes and everything. So we're going to add in the weapon part to the scene. So let's move this out of the way first. And we need to go into our prefabs and items, and we're going to add in a weapon part. So let's drop in a weapon part. I'm going to put this, doesn't really matter. We're going to drop it right there, and this weapon part by default is going to be disabled, but what we're going to do is let's just bring this over so you can see what's going on. Bring this over, zoom in, there's our weapon part at the moment. So what we want our weapon part though is we want it way over here, and we want it to drop about like maybe like right here or so, to drop down to the ground. So we want it to, first we want to change its location. And the location we're going to put is a 23 and 1. So it's going to drop from right there and then going to drop down to the ground. And so next what we need is the audio clip for when it is captured. And that's going to be under the item clip. And from listening to the game, the item clip that we actually end up using, it's the bonus ball sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to audio sounds. And the bonus ball is number 26, so we're going to drag that into the audio clip. The rest of this stuff doesn't matter, we can ignore all that. And then we want the weapon part color. Now there's various colors on this, and it's the orange one. There's kind of flickers between an orange and a red, just like it basically matches Bomb Man's color pattern. And then we want the weapon part enemy, which I was talking about before. This is going to be Bomb Man. So when this thing gets captured, it's like, hey, Mega Man now can have Bomb Man's weapon. So it's going to go into our structure and enable that that array item, so we know it's his. All right, and last but not least is we're going to disable this. So it's going to be disabled by default when the scene is running until that event gets captured, or it gets triggered, and then it's going to activate, and it's going to fall from the sky and land on the ground. So that is for the weapon part. Now Bomb Man, we need to make a couple of changes with Bomb Man. So we already moved his X and his Y, but now that we have this other thing that's going to be called has health bar. So we want to give him a health bar. So we're going to check that off. The other thing we're going to do is we're not going to have his score here. The level right now is going to pass what score over to the game manager, and when we do this later, we're going to fix it so that it's actually the level select that's going to pass the score over, because it's going to be randomly chosen. Current health, this is going to be the same. This is all the same stuff. However, by default, he has a weapon part, but we don't want that because it's inside of the scene right now. So we're going to say nothing. And we'll just say this is random for right now. But I'm going to show you the other method for when he drops the weapon item, and we go between the action and the event listener and all that, and I'll show you all that stuff. Next thing we're going to do is whenever he is invincible, he does not have the dink sound.
So we're going to actually remove that sound. So we don't want that. So we're going to take that out, so no dink sound. Now the other thing is these are the events inside of the BombMan controller. So we have an event that take damage, which makes them flash, and now we added in the invincibility factor into that, coroutine and everything like that. The other thing is the defeat event, so this is where he explodes and everything like that, and I can't remember exactly what happens inside of him when he gets defeated. Oh, we removed the bomb, and this is kind of moot at this point because we already have the destroy weapons running elsewhere, but it's fine, whatever. We can leave it, it's not a big deal. If it finds the bomb, it'll remove it. If the other one finds it, it'll remove it too, based off the tag. So here we're going to add in a secondary defeat event. So we're going to hit the plus on there, and we're going to do it from main scene. And so off the main scene script, we're going to say boss defeated. So we want this function to get called once BombMan gets defeated. So, and then, you know, that'll basically stop the music, etc., which we already went through. So those are the changes that we're going to make to BombMan. So we can save that. Next thing we're going to do is we already did the left wall, we already did the right wall, we did the ground, did the backgrounds. Let's see what else is there. Yeah, we did the backgrounds. Okay, the game manager, we already did that earlier on. We added on the point tally, so we have that so that 2 subclips can get created dynamically through code. So that's finished. So now we're going to go back over to the main scene. We have some things that we need to fill in here. So we have our boss fight clip and our victory clip. So let's go get those. We're going to get those from music. So boss battle is going to go to the boss fight, and victory theme is going to go into there. And then we have our 2 game objects, which are our enemy and our weapon part. So our enemy is BombMan, so we're going to drag him into the enemy, and our weapon part is this, which is going to go right there. And then our sequence, blah blah blah, should all be the same. So our enemy is BombMan, we got this starting at that. Fine, so these are already filled in based off of the other data that we already set through the script, so it got pulled from the script, etc. Okay. And we already did the sprite asset, the bonus items, and we moved it into the TextMesh Pro Sprite Asset folder so that we can use it in a string. If you didn't do this, you're going to get a couple of arrows pointing in opposite directions, and it's going to be like, I don't know what this is. So that's why when you create the sprite asset, you need to drag it into the TextMesh Pros folder so it knows where to look for those names. So now it knows, oh, that bonus items, oh, of that index picture. Got it. Now I know how to show it in the string. So that's what that's all about. And then I do believe, I think that brings us to the end of that, so we can actually probably try this out now. So I am going to bring this up, and hopefully if I didn't forget anything, it should just run really nice, and we should have our boss fight. So let's start it up. Alright, so I'm going to go in and jumping in. Okay, so I got a screwdriver here. I'm going to kill him real quick. Boom. Got me a bonus ball. So I got my 500 points and I got 1,000 for a bonus ball. Killed my orange one. Got myself 1,000 points now. And another bonus ball for another 1,000. So I'm just going to go through this. Play the whole sequence out. And we're going to get up here. This is our first sequence that we hit. That's going to do the hologram part. So we'll make, what's funny about this is when I was doing this, I was like, Mega Man in his dialogue here, he says, I don't see any disturbance. But yeah, I guess those 2 screwdrivers, they weren't a disturbance, right? So, if they're more enemies, you can always change the dialogue. Alright, so Dr. Light phases out, got player control again, we jump into this, our mock checkpoint, which we'll get to checkpoints and stuff. So if I was to die from BombMan, I'd want to restart here. My left wall got moved, so I'm blocked in, that's nothing new, but my right wall, which used to keep me blocked in over here, is now gone. It's over to the right of BombMan. Oh! Ha ha ha, I did forget something. I forgot my camera coordinates for extending this out. Okay. Well, let's see here.
I'll have to go get those numbers later from the other project and update it. But for right now, let's see, our max, let's just bring it over. I think it's 18 or 20 actually. Let's just do 20 for right now. Because that's where basically, not exactly. Anyway, maybe it was 18. And here's the bomb. Here's where we fight Bomb Man. And then we're gonna fight Bomb Man. He's gonna much harder now because every time I shoot him, he's only gonna take that one hit of damage because he's invincible until he's done splashing. So much like me. Let's get out of the way. Because he's gonna chuck him in bombs. So I thought I needed to give this guy some teeth, but now I don't have to because now that was logical. Boom. Bomb Man dies. If he did have a bomb or explosions from the bomb, they would all disappear. Our music stopped. If you noticed, you were listening to it. It kept looping and looping and looping, and it didn't play the beginning of that audio. So now we're stuck. We're stuck in the boss fight. We're the one stage here. Now I'm going to collect the weapon part. Now the music playing, and then we should get our tally points. And then we got our 2 bonus balls. Boom! And then the scene will start over after 15 seconds of being announced. So we still have our score. Cool. And then here, I'm going to do the W to warp. So there, we just jumped ahead. Oh, there's what the code. That's what the numbers were. Okay, now I know what they are because we did get them from the other thing. We could fix it. So I'm just going to defeat him one more time. So you can see that the score goes up. We should only have 1 bonus ball collected. And there he goes. Boom, dead. Capture that bonus, that weapon part. We got 50,000 again, but only 1,000 this time, because we only defeated the first screwdriver. When the scene should reload, we should have 104,500 points now, which we did. So that's remembered. Now what I want to check here is if I look on the player, and if I look at my structure here, Bomb Man, you see this enabled? Now it's enabled, because it got enabled from the game manager. I copied it over. So if you were to check at the beginning, it would be 0, or it would be unchecked because it didn't get caught and it wasn't captured. So I'm going to fix that one thing. So if in case you don't actually copy the code and everything from my GitHub, then you can actually just get those boundaries. So we're going to get that from the main scene because it's a 22. No, that's not where he jumps to. Actually, yeah, it is. 22. It doesn't sound right though. Anyway, hold on a sec. Let me see if I can find it. One moment. Alright, took me a minute to find it. So go over to your transitions and then Highway 3 under here for the camera transition script for the new min and max positions. What you're going to do is, I think it's already at 12.2 for the X on the minimum, but the maximum we're going to just change it to 18 on the X. The rest of this is all the same. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to run it one more time just to make sure. So we shouldn't get, the camera should move more into that after the checkpoint. So let's run it. We can't skip ahead, unfortunately, because we actually jumped past that part.
we're going to have to play the sequence out, which is fine. Doesn't take that long. So we're going to come up here. So the first sequence is going to play out with Dr. Light. And then say you can't stay here long, holograms unstable, etc., no disturbance. All those screwdrivers are not considered disturbances, etc. Alright, so now we're going to come up here, we're going to transition, boom, locked in. So now my camera should move to the right, it shouldn't be stuck over there. Alright, cool, there we go. So we get over here to 18, so 22 should be over here somewhere, and that's where it gets taken control of. Boom, and we start the boss fight again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit E to explode. There, I died. Anyway, we already beat him. We saw the energy bar going down, so that's his energy bar, etc. And that's the end. So this is our boss fight video and code, and I hope you found it useful. So we animated it much like how the original game does it. So we got the bar increment, we just don't have the flashing or the door closing part. I mean, that's fine. I mean, we replicate Bomb Man's actual level one day, then we'll do that part. But it's not a big deal. You can do that with the transition event to make an animation happen, etc., and move colliders around with the function. It's not a big deal. So we have a new thing where we can tie a health bar or an energy bar to an enemy, in this case a boss. The regular ones don't have that. And we collect a weapon part. We somewhat activated it on the player's end, but the next video is going to be actually the collection aspect of it as its own video. So then I'll work on the saving and the restoring the state, so whatever energy the weapon happens to end up with upon defeat or whatever, then that'll be saved and transferred over when the scene reloads, and I'll work all those little details out. And then Mega Man switching to his hyper bomb power and being able to switch between that and the bullets and everything like that. So I got to work that out as well, switching between weapons, and then throwing the bomb. And then we'll get to see our bounce material and see the bomb explode after a delay instead of it, touching the ground right away. So it'll be fun. So we're going to work on that one next. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed yet, then I recommend you subscribe, because we're building out Mega Man little by little. This is only video 21, and how many more there are going to be, but there's still a lot more of the game that I haven't covered yet. And so stay safe out there, have a good day, and I will catch you at the next video. Bye.